Hey guys, thanks for tuning into The Real D with V. Today I wanted to get a little bit more personal with you guys, and I wanted to talk to you guys about why we shouldn't shelter our kids. This is coming from my firsthand experience growing up sheltered. As you all know, I'm Latina, so it's very common for Latino families to shelter their daughters. They tend to be a little bit more overprotective of the daughters than they are of the sons. With my family, they were very protective with the girls and the boys. Could kind of do whatever they wanted and just kind of be free. So I was not really allowed to do much. It wasn't until like my late years in high school that I got to actually start, doing stuff. I really didn't get the chance to socialize a lot with kids. I wasn't allowed to go to the movies with friends. Just a lot of other fun things that kids experience. What a lot of parents fail to realize is that by sheltering your children, you're actually hurting them in the long term. It can affect your child and really hold them back from a lot in life. I don't have any hard feelings towards my parents at all for sheltering me because it isn't their fault. It's how they were raised in their society. It's what they know. And so I don't have any hard feelings towards them. But what I will say is that I'm glad that I've learned through their mistake in sheltering me, not to do that to my daughter. I wasn't allowed to do very much growing up. When it came to like sports and activities, I wanted to do all of that, but my parents just, they were always just paranoid, paranoid that their little girl was going to lose her innocence, and just, it was just, those types of fears. And about the sports, my mom did let me do sports, but it wasn't until I think my sophomore year in high school, and I only got to do 1 year, and I would have been more active in activities with school if my parents were more free in letting me do that. But it wasn't just because they didn't want to let me, it was more so because my parents did work nights. So with both of them working nights, of course, they're, who's going to pick us up and take us? They didn't really trust anyone to take us to and from. So it was one of those scenarios, I'm pretty sure if both my parents didn't work nights, if they worked alternate shifts, I'm pretty sure, my mom would have taken me to practices and stuff if she would have been able to, if she didn't have to work nights, because my mother was always very involved with us. And I know that if we would have been able to do sports and she didn't have to work hard the way that she did, I'm pretty sure she would have encouraged me to do that more. And so that's why I don't have a grudge against my parents. Even as a little girl, I wasn't really allowed to hang out with any friend, go to friends' houses very often. It had to be very close friends of my parents, where they really knew the people. But typically, I wasn't really allowed to go anywhere. I spent a lot of time in the house, especially sleepovers. That was definitely a no-no. It was very rare for me to sleep over at a friend's house. I mean, it did happen, but it wasn't until I got a little bit older. But even then, it was very rare. And what parents, I guess, don't think about when they're sheltering their children, all you're thinking about is, when I'm not there, what is my child getting exposed to, or what are they being influenced by? And although it is, good to think that way, what we also need to stop and think about is, well, by sheltering my child, I'm holding something back from them, and that's the opportunity to socialize with their peers, and get to have those little life experiences, because you need those in life to learn how to talk to people and learn how to express yourself to different people. And it's just a part of life, meeting friends, meeting people. The people you meet throughout your life, they touch you in a way, and you learn something from every person, I believe, that you cross paths with. And so it's important, to let your children let them have friends and do fun, innocent children things. What parents need to do is communicate more with their children. Share your values with them. Let them know what's important. That's the best way you can prevent your child from doing anything bad. And luckily for my parents, them sheltering me didn't make me rebel. I was a good kid. I didn't care. I didn't really care much. I am a bit of a homebody, so I guess it wasn't such a big deal for me. But I will say, it did suck to not be able to really get to hang out with friends a lot. And my parents just, they really didn't, they were just always so paranoid. And it was always just like, well, who knows what might be going on when we're not around, kind of stuff. And instead of sitting down and just having those talks with me, see, they weren't open with me as far as, I didn't have the birds and the bees talks and the drugs talk. I mean, they talked to us, but it was always, don't do it because it's not good for you. And it wasn't like a sit down, elaborated talk. My parents tended to sort of avoid those subjects. And I think it's because their parents probably weren't that way with them. So, something they probably didn't know. And it's hard to grow as a parent, especially when you're struggling financially. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. So, my parents worked hard to give us, the little that we had. I don't blame them at all. I know they were just looking out for us. But I just want to share how I learned that, and how I'm not going to do that with my daughter, because it's important to let our kids live life. And I don't mean set them free and let them do whatever they want. What I mean is pass those values down to your children and let them know what's important. Talk to your kids. It's very important to communicate with your kids and just let them know what's important. And one thing I know that I'm going to do with my daughter is I'm going to share some of my life experiences with her as she grows, at the appropriate times in her life, of course, so that she can learn from the mistakes that I've made or the things that I've been through. And that's the best way that we can show our kids how to avoid being hurt or making a lot of mistakes that we might fear for them to make. Instead of sheltering them from making these mistakes, we should guide them. And a lot of parents forget to guide their children. They just worry about raising them and making sure they're okay. But you also have to remember that you're your child's guidance. We shouldn't blind our children. The best thing that we could do is prepare them for the real world and just teach them the ways of life and the obstacles that life brings and what lessons they can learn from them. And if they take your guidance, then great. And if they don't, then hopefully once they make that mistake, they'll learn from you explaining to them what you've been through. There's a lot of things that we want to protect our children from, a lot of bad things. There's a lot of bad things in this world that I wish my daughter will never see or know about, but unfortunately she will one day, and I would rather prepare her for those things than hide her and keep her away from them, and then when she grows up she'll be fearful, and it'll be hard for her to pursue her goals and her dreams because she's fearful, and I don't want her to be that way. I don't want her to grow up that way. And so that's just my advice to the world, to everybody. Don't shelter your kids. It's not going to protect them. The best thing you can do is, teach them the ways and just guide them. Just guide them the best way you can.